The closer you get to breaking through, the louder the distractions become. Stay still. What if their silence isn't silence at all? What if it's bait? A game? A quiet trap wrapped in emotional mystery, designed to see if you'll be the first to blink, the first to speak, the first to crack? My friends, we're diving into something that most people never even realize. They think silence always means peace or indifference. But sometimes it's a test, a silent dare, daring you to come closer. And that's exactly why you shouldn't. Before we go deeper, do me a favor. If this already has your attention, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me. This is going to be one of those videos that makes you see everything a little clearer. Hey folks, imagine this. You're in a forest at night. It's quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no wind, not even your footsteps. And just when you start to feel calm in that silence, something inside you whispers, "This isn't peace. This is a trap." That's what their silence feels like. On the surface, it's calm, like they're unbothered. But underneath, it's tension, it's calculation, it's the waiting game. They're hoping you'll move first. They're hoping your curiosity will outweigh your discipline. They're not moving because they're content. They're not moving because they're watching. You see, folks, here's the lie we've been sold. That silence always means someone doesn't care. That if someone's not reaching out, it's because they've forgotten you. But what if it's the opposite? What if they're not reaching out because they're waiting for you to do it first? To relieve their ego, to break the tension, to feed their need to still feel wanted. That's the secret most never talk about. Sometimes silence is not absence, it's strategy. And it gets deeper. You ever seen someone fishing? They don't chase the fish. They sit, they wait. And what do they use? Bait. Something shiny, something tempting. That's what their silence can be. It looks like calm, but it's meant to draw you in, to see if you'll bite, if you'll send that text, if you'll check their story, if you'll give them the hit of validation they're craving, without ever having to risk their pride. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That includes their silence. Their silence is their event, not your responsibility. You don't need to respond to every quiet spell like it's a crisis. You don't need to interpret every pause as rejection. Because here's the truth. When someone wants to talk to you, they will. And if they don't, then your job isn't to decode them. Your job is to respect yourself enough to stay grounded. Let me tell you something a little funny, but painfully true. You ever notice that when you stop chasing someone, they suddenly start posting more? Suddenly, they're living their best life. Suddenly, every story looks like a highlight reel from a rom-com? That's not coincidence, my friends. That's strategy. That's them seeing if you're watching. That's them turning silence into bait. They want to feel desired without having to be vulnerable. But here's what we do different. We don't chase ghosts. We don't respond to traps. We sit in our stillness and we grow from it. This video is for the man who's felt the weight of someone else's silence and thought, "Did I do something wrong?" You didn't. Their silence might not be rejection. It might be manipulation. It might be a test. And when you realize that, you no longer feel pressure to break it. You feel peace in not reacting. That's Stoic strength. That's emotional discipline. That's how you take your power back. So here's what I want you to write in the comments right now. My silence is strength. Let it be your anchor. Say it, type it, believe it. And if this hits something deep inside you, If this helped you break through one of those old mental traps, press the like button, hit that subscribe, and stay with me. We're only getting started. Number 1. The bait of silence. Don't fall for it. The one who speaks first often loses the power of the moment. Let's be real, their silence has been driving you a little mad, hasn't it? It's not just the absence of words, it's the presence of uncertainty. And uncertainty is a cruel game. It doesn't just make you wonder if they're done with you. It makes you wonder if you should do something. If maybe, just maybe, this is your fault. But what if I told you this silence isn't a response, it's bait? You heard me. It's not peace. It's not closure. It's a calculated pause, a trap dressed up as stillness. And they're sitting back, watching, hoping you make the next move. So they don't have to. Imagine a snake coiled in the grass. It doesn't hiss. It doesn't strike. It waits. Still, silent, but completely focused. You think you're safe because it hasn't moved. But the truth is, it's waiting for you to move first. That's the energy of this kind of silence. It's not a goodbye. It's a test. And the worst part, most people don't even realize it. They start wondering, should I just send one message? Should I like their post? Maybe that'll break the tension. What if they think I don't care? These are the questions that echo in the mind of someone walking straight into the trap. And that's exactly what they want. Because if they stay quiet and you speak up, they win. Not in love, not in truth, but in control. They get the upper hand. They get to feel desired without ever risking rejection. That's the lie this silence tells. It pretends to be noble, but it's rooted in ego. My friends, let's break that lie wide open. You don't owe anyone your voice just because they went quiet. You don't owe them clarity when they left you in the dark. That's not love. That's manipulation wrapped in stillness. A real connection doesn't need to test your patience to prove its worth. It communicates. It meets you halfway. It doesn't sit in silence hoping you'll come crawling. Now, I get it. It's not easy to sit with that discomfort. The fear creeps in. You wonder if your silence is pushing them away. You imagine them moving on, forgetting you, replacing you. That's the emotional illusion they want you to fall for. But let me ask you something. If someone is really gone, why are they watching so closely to see if you'll reach out? Why do they keep throwing little breadcrumbs? Why does their silence feel strategic instead of sincere? Because it is. Seneca once said, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive." In other words, if you're too afraid to lose, you'll never stand strong. And that's what this is really about. This moment you're in. It's not about romance anymore. It's about your response. Will you chase? Will you cave? Or will you hold your silence like a sword, sharp and steady? Here's the truth. If their silence is a test, then your self-control is the answer. You passing that test has nothing to do with winning them back. It has everything to do with winning yourself back. Because every time you choose not to react, not to explain yourself, not to beg for attention, you build a version of you that's no longer moved by emotional tricks. And that version of you, that's who they didn't expect. That's the man they won't forget. So write this in the comments if you're ready to pass the test on your terms. I won't chase silence. Say it out loud. Write it with power. Show yourself, show them, show the world around you that you're no longer the one who breaks first. And stay with me, because in the next part, we're diving even deeper into why they want you to crack first, and how ego, not love, is what's really behind their silence. Number 2, the ego trap. Why they want you to break first. The greatest victory is not in conquering others, but in mastering yourself. Let's not sugarcoat it. Sometimes their silence isn't about healing or space or moving on. It's about pride, straight up ego. It's not that they don't feel something for you, it's that they feel something for themselves more. And in their world, silence becomes a power move, a quiet dare, a way of saying, let's see who breaks first. This isn't about who cares more. It's about who appears to care less. And that right there is the trap. You see, folks, ego doesn't like to bend. It doesn't like to risk. It hates being vulnerable. So instead of saying, I miss you, or I'm hurt, they say nothing. They retreat. Not because they're over it, but because they want you to prove you're not. That's the game. Their silence becomes a bet, and you are the one they're wagering on. Imagine two people on opposite ends of a rope, both holding tight. Now one lets go, hoping the other pulls harder. That's what this dynamic is. They let go emotionally, not because they want to disconnect, but because they want you to panic, to tug harder, to prove your attachment. That's not connection. That's ego warfare. And here's where it gets dangerous, because if you don't know what's happening, you'll walk right into it. You'll mistake silence for sadness, detachment for dignity. You'll think, maybe if I just check in, they'll open up. But no. When their silence is ego-based, your message doesn't bring them closer. It feeds the beast. It gives them the hit of control they crave. It reassures them they still have you, without them having to lift a finger. But my friends, this is where Stoicism saves you. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And what is living, really? It's freedom from ego, from games, from needing to prove yourself to someone who's hiding behind emotional silence. You don't need to prove anything to someone who's testing you. That's not love. That's manipulation dressed in calm. Real love is expressive. It's willing to risk the ego. It communicates. But when they pull back just to watch you sweat, that's not emotional maturity. That's emotional insecurity dressed in pride. And let's be honest, it messes with your head. You sit there wondering, are they hurt? Do they want me to reach out? What if I lose them forever? That's the fear talking. That's the narrative ego wants you to believe. But pause. Step back. Ask yourself the real question. Why am I the only one who has to bend? If the connection was real, if the feelings were mutual, why is the entire weight of reconciliation sitting on your shoulders? Because their ego won't let them make the first move. But guess what? Neither should yours. Because your silence now isn't passive. It's protective. You're not staying quiet to play games. You're staying quiet because you refuse to bow to manipulation. That's real strength. That's emotional discipline. And let me tell you, discipline is magnetic. While they're watching you to see if you'll fold, you're building the kind of inner power that doesn't beg for validation. You become a mystery, a presence they can't predict. And that, folks, is what rattles the ego. It expected you to break. It expected you to chase. But now you're calm, unshaken, centered. That's Stoic power in action. So let's flip this whole thing on its head. Let them play their game. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Your job? Stay grounded, stay silent, stay strong, not to hurt them, but to protect yourself, not to win them back, but to make sure you don't lose yourself in the process. And if you've ever felt trapped in this ego tug-of-war, say it with me now. Drop this in the comments, right here, right now. I protect my peace. Let it be your shield. Let it be your anchor, because the moment you stop fighting for someone's attention is the moment you start walking in your true power. Stay with me, because up next, we're going even deeper into how your reaction is the real test, and why passing that test rewrites everything they thought they knew about you. Number 3. Your reaction is the real test. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Let's cut through the noise. It's not their silence that matters most. It's your reaction to it. That's what they're watching. That's the part they're silently studying. Because in the space where you're tempted to respond, to reach out, to explain or question or chase, they're silently thinking, will he break? See, silence itself isn't loud, but what you do with it echoes. And folks, that echo, that's what they're listening for. They may not text you, they may not call, but trust me, they're checking the story views. They're watching the subtle shifts. They're listening for a ripple in your stillness. They want to know if their absence made you stumble. Because to someone stuck in ego, your reaction isn't just a response, it's validation. Proof that they still matter. Proof that they still have you on a leash, even in silence. Imagine this, a chess match where one player makes a bold move, then leans back in their chair, arms folded, eyes locked in. They're not moving anymore. Why? Because the next move is yours, and they want to see if you panic, if you rush, if you fold under pressure. That's what their silence is. It's a leaned-back dare, a watchful stillness, a test not of love, but of your control. And, my friends, this is where most people lose. Not because they lack feelings, not because they're weak, but because they let someone else's silence dictate their sense of urgency. They flinch, they chase, they explain, and in that instant, the power flips. You go from mystery to memory, from strength to scrambling, from composed to exposed. But not you, not this time, because now you see the game, and now you're playing a different one. This is where Stoicism shines, not just as a philosophy, but as armor. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And right now, your silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It's not passive. It's patient. It's not weakness. It's warrior-like restraint. Because reacting would be easy. It would feel good for a second. But it would give them exactly what they're waiting for. Proof that you're still orbiting around them. But when you don't react, when you hold your center, when you stay still, when you refuse to hand over your peace just to soothe their curiosity, you become something different. You become unreadable. You become a man of depth, of discipline, of purpose. And that, my friends, is what truly shakes them. Because deep down, they were expecting the old version of you, the one who always replied, the one who'd rush to fix things, the one who couldn't sit with silence without breaking under it. But now, you're calm, collected, focused, and that silence, that storm you once feared, It's become your training ground. Let me tell you something personal. The most powerful moments of transformation don't happen when someone texts you, "I miss you." They happen when someone doesn't, and you still don't flinch. That's where the power builds. That's where you level up. When you stop making your emotional stability dependent on someone else's inconsistency. So what if they're testing you? So what if they want to see you react? That's their game. But you're not in the business of performing for someone else's comfort. You're in the business of protecting your peace, building your strength, becoming undeniable. And here's what I want you to remember. No reaction is still a message, and often it's the most powerful one. It says, "I see what you're doing, and I don't flinch." It says, "You don't get to pull my strings anymore." It says, "I've outgrown the old dance we used to do." So if you're feeling that pressure right now, if your fingers are hovering over your phone, if your heart's screaming for you to just do something, pause, breathe, step into your power, and remind yourself of this truth. Silence is strength when it's chosen, not forced. Drop this in the comments if you're ready to pass the test with grace and grit. I don't flinch. Say it out loud. Show yourself. Show them. Show the world that your power isn't in how you react. It's in how you don't. And stay with me, because in the next section we'll dig into a darker truth. How some people want you to prove you care while they offer you nothing in return. Number 4, they want proof you still care without giving anything themselves. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Epictetus. Let's get honest for a second, folks. You ever feel like they're not saying anything, but they're expecting everything from you? They haven't called, they haven't messaged, they haven't checked in, not directly at least. But still, there's this strange weight in the air. Like they're sitting back, arms crossed, waiting for you to flinch, waiting for you to break, waiting for proof that they still mean something to you, while giving you absolutely nothing in return. That's the twisted game a lot of people play. They want the reassurance without the responsibility. They want to know you still care, without having to show that they do. It's emotional cowardice wrapped in silence. And they do it because it works, because most people, good people, fall for it. But not you, not anymore. Imagine a fire. Now imagine someone standing near it, warming their hands. They didn't build the fire. They didn't gather the wood. They didn't light the match. But they want the heat. That's what this is. They want the warmth of your attention, your energy, your care, without offering any fuel of their own. And they'll stand there as long as you keep burning. But the second you stop feeding that fire, they feel the cold. And instead of building their own, they'll just wait to see if you relight it. Here's the trap. They pretend their silence means nothing. But every post they make, every little breadcrumb they drop, it's a fishing line. They want you to bite. They want you to respond. They want proof. Proof that they're still on your mind. Proof that you haven't moved on. Proof that you'll still pick up the phone if they needed you to. But give them that proof, and you lose your power. Because now, they don't have to risk anything. They don't have to say how they feel. They don't have to be vulnerable. Why? Because you did it first. You broke the silence. You showed your hand. And that tells them everything they needed to know. But my friends, Stoicism teaches us something deeper. It teaches us to reverse the game. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, don't prove your worth to people who are too afraid to show theirs. Don't dance for someone who won't even take a step toward you. Because someone who truly cares shows it. They don't sit in silence waiting for you to pass their invisible tests. They communicate. They meet you halfway. But if they're sitting in silence and watching, if they're creating space just to see if you'll close the gap, that's not care. That's control. That's them trying to hold your emotions hostage while keeping theirs in the vault. And that's not the kind of dynamic you deserve. Not anymore. I know it's tempting. I know the silence feels heavy. I know the urge to reach out can hit like a wave at midnight. But you have to remember, you're not responsible for proving your heart to someone who won't even show theirs. That's not strength. That's self-abandonment. Instead, choose you. Not in a selfish way, but in a solid way. In a way that says, I will not beg for what should be freely given. In a way that says, I'll give my energy where it's reciprocated, not where it's silently demanded. Because here's the twist. They think their silence puts you in emotional debt. But the moment you stop playing their game, you realize you never owed them anything. Your care, your presence, your attention. Those are gifts, not guarantees. And gifts shouldn't be given to people who wait in silence just to test your willingness to give. So let's shift the focus. Let them sit, let them watch, let them wonder. But you stay focused on you. You keep building, keep rising, keep becoming the version of you that no longer chases validation in silence, but finds power in peace. And if this section hit home, if you felt that pull to prove your worth to someone who gave you nothing to work with, write this in the comments right now. I owe them nothing. Say it, type it, stand in it. Show yourself. Show the version of you that no longer bends for breadcrumbs, and stay with me, because in the next part, we're unlocking a Stoic superpower most overlook, the quiet, unbeatable strength of doing nothing at all. Number 5. The hidden power in doing nothing. Practice being indifferent to what makes no difference. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They think doing nothing is weak. That silence means you've given up. That not reacting means you're losing. But what if I told you? Doing nothing is sometimes the most powerful thing you can do. What if stillness isn't surrender, but strategy? See, we live in a world that's obsessed with action. Text back, call, post something, show them you're okay, show them you're not, show something. But here's the truth, no one wants to admit. Sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. Imagine a lion. It doesn't chase every noise it hears in the grass. It doesn't pounce just because something twitches. It waits. It watches. It holds its power. That's you now. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Not to be passive, but to be precise. Not to waste energy on what doesn't serve you. And sometimes the most precise thing you can do is nothing, because silence. Silence shakes people, especially when they expected you to react, when they thought they had control over your emotions, when they expected the old version of you to break, to reach out, to spiral. But instead, you're calm, still, focused. And that silence? It speaks louder than any message ever could. It says, I don't chase confusion. It says, I'm not afraid of your absence. It says, I've made peace with not knowing. And that kind of message, you can't fake that. You can't post your way to that kind of power. You earn it in the quiet. The reason it's so hard to do nothing is because doing nothing forces you to face yourself. It's easy to get distracted by a reply, a reaction, a breadcrumb of attention. But when you do nothing, when you sit with your thoughts, your emotions, your doubt, that's where the work begins. That's where you grow. And yes, folks, they feel it. That's the part they won't admit. Your silence becomes a mirror they weren't ready to look into. While you're over there, evolving, they're stuck wondering, why hasn't he reacted? Why hasn't he chased? Was I wrong about him? They feel that absence creeping in. They feel the gravity shift. Because now, they're not in control. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about playing games. This isn't about reverse psychology. This is about reclaiming your emotional freedom. Your peace, your time. You're choosing not to waste energy on someone who would rather test you than talk to you. You're not punishing them, you're prioritizing you. Seneca said it best. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And you, my friend, are done wasting time on emotional chess matches. You're done feeding fires that only burn you. You're done throwing rope to people who watched you drown in silence. So what do you do now? You hold your ground. You build in the dark. You level up in the shadows. While they're trying to provoke a reaction, you're provoking your own transformation. Because silence isn't just about staying quiet. It's about listening. Listening to what you truly want. Who you're becoming. What actually deserves your attention. Let them wonder why you haven't flinched. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them feel what it's like when your energy is no longer on tap. And if they come back, good. But they're not coming back to the same version of you. They're meeting someone stronger, someone sharper, someone who learned how to do the hardest thing of all, nothing. So if you're sitting in that space right now, if the silence feels heavy, if the urge to react is eating you alive, breathe and remind yourself, not every battle is won by fighting. Some are won by refusing to engage. And if this message hit deep, if you feel the weight of your own growth, if you're choosing stillness over surrender, type this in the comments right now. My silence is strength. Say it with power. Show them. Show yourself. Because doing nothing, that's not weakness, it's mastery. Stay with me. In the next section, we'll sharpen your discernment, because not all silence is a test. Some of it is real indifference, and knowing the difference, that's where the real wisdom begins. Number 6. Silence versus indifference. How to tell the difference. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. All right, my friends, let's talk about something that confuses even the strongest minds. The silence that sits between two people who once meant everything to each other. Because here's the truth most won't say out loud. Not all silence is a test. Sometimes it's not bait. Sometimes it's not a game. Sometimes it's just indifference. But how do you know the difference? See, silence wears many masks. One day it's power, the next day it's peace, and sometimes it's distance with no intention of return. That's what makes this so tough. That's what keeps you up at night, wondering, are they thinking about me too, or have they really moved on? That's the mental prison, not knowing what the silence means. But let's break that chain once and for all. Let me give you a picture. Imagine two fires. One is low but still burning. It just hasn't been fed. The other? It's out, cold, ashes. Now, from a distance, they look the same. No flames, no movement, just stillness. But if you get close, if you watch carefully, you'll see the truth. One still has heat underneath, waiting for a spark. The other's dead. That's how silence works. One kind waits for connection. The other doesn't care if you come back or not. And here's the key difference: intent. Indifference isn't quiet with tension, it's quiet with peace. Not the kind of peace you build through healing, but the kind that comes from letting go entirely. Indifference doesn't post to get your attention. It doesn't leave breadcrumbs. It doesn't peek at your stories or hover in your energy. It just lets go. So how do you tell? Watch, don't chase. Pay attention to the energy, not the echo. If their silence feels cold, flat, empty, not calculated, not tense, but simply gone, it may not be a test. It may just be detachment. And that's okay. Because the goal of Stoicism isn't to decode them. It's to understand yourself in the process. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So instead of obsessing over what their silence means, turn your attention inward. Ask yourself the harder question: why am I still waiting for someone who isn't waiting for me? That's where the real work begins. Indifference isn't something you fight. It's something you accept. It doesn't require revenge or reaction. It just requires release. And yeah, that hurts. It's one thing to lose someone to a game. It's another to lose them to their own peace. But even that has beauty in it. Because when someone is truly indifferent, it gives you permission to finally stop wondering, to finally stop waiting, to stop walking on eggshells, hoping their silence breaks. And that, my friend, is freedom. But here's where it gets powerful, when you don't need their silence to be a test, when it doesn't matter whether it's bait or goodbye, when you've grown enough to respond to both the same way, with grace, with detachment, and with calm. That's the Stoic move. That's emotional mastery. Because whether they're watching or they've truly let go, you're still you, still steady, still building, still rising, and you're no longer the version of yourself who needs to be picked, chosen, or validated to feel worthy. You're the version who says, whether they return or not, I'll be fine. You win not because they come back. You win because you stopped needing them to. Let them be indifferent. Let them walk away. Let them be silent with no hidden meaning. You don't need to force a story where there is none. Your story continues either way, and it gets better, stronger, sharper. You start choosing people who don't confuse your heart. You stop mistaking silence for depth. And most importantly, you stop handing out your peace to people who left it behind like it meant nothing. So if this section hit home, if you're finally seeing the difference between silence that's strategic and silence that's just done, drop this in the comments right now. I release what isn't mine. Say it like you mean it. Let it be your closure. Let it be your declaration. And stay with me, because in the next part, we flip everything. If their silence was a test, what happens when you pass it without even playing? That's when transformation begins. That's when the tables turn. Let's go. Number 7. Section 7. Turning their test into your transformation. The obstacle on the path becomes the path. Never forget, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition. Marcus Aurelius. Let's be real for a second, my friends. Maybe their silence was a test. Maybe they wanted to see how long you'd last. Maybe they were counting on you to break, to fold, to crawl back just to give them the comfort they weren't brave enough to ask for. But here's the twist. They expected weakness, and instead, you gave them growth. See, what they didn't realize is that their silence didn't destroy you, it refined you. It didn't weaken your spirit, it revealed it. You took the very thing that was meant to shake your self-worth and turned it into a foundation of discipline, patience, and quiet power. And that is where the real transformation begins. Imagine a seed buried in soil, alone, in the dark, forgotten. It looks dead to anyone passing by. No sunlight, no applause, no signs of life. But what they don't see is what's happening underneath. Roots are forming, strength is building, and eventually that seed doesn't just grow, it breaks the surface stronger than it was ever expected to. That's you. Their silence was the soil, but you were the seed the whole time. They thought the silence would make you question yourself, and maybe for a while it did. Maybe you had nights where the silence screamed louder than their words ever did. Maybe you doubted your worth, your choices, your progress. But here's the thing, you didn't stay there. You sat with the silence. You stared it down, and instead of reaching for them, you reached inward. You found something stronger than attention. You found peace. And that kind of growth, that kind of self-realization, it can't be faked. It can't be rushed. It's the kind of evolution that leaves people stunned when they see you again, because you're no longer the man who's waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. That's the part they never expected. They expected the old you, the reactive one, the one who would fold under pressure, the one who would interpret silence as rejection instead of seeing it as space to rebuild. But instead of crawling back into old habits, you built new ones. Instead of chasing validation, you chased vision. Instead of falling for the test, you transcended it. And here's the truth they'll feel, even if they never admit it. You passed the test without even playing the game. That changes everything. Because now they're not dealing with the same version of you. They're dealing with a man who didn't just survive the silence, he grew in it. A man who doesn't reach out to be understood, but chooses silence because he's finally understood himself. And that kind of presence, it lingers, it echoes, it makes them question if they ever really knew you at all. And let's be honest, this isn't just about them anymore. This is about you becoming the man who doesn't beg to be seen, the man who doesn't explain his value, the man who walks through confusion with clarity, through loneliness with self-respect, through silence with strength. Seneca said, "It is not that we are given a short life, but we make it short by wasting time." And you, my friend, have stopped wasting time. You've stopped wasting energy on people who test your heart but don't match your effort. You've stopped playing tug-of-war with your peace. This was never about getting them back. This was about getting you back. The real you, the disciplined you, the one who sees silence not as a loss, but as a space to build. So if you're in that phase right now, if you're turning their silence into your transformation, drop this in the comments. I'm growing in the silence. Let the world hear you without you saying a word. Let them see it in your presence, your energy, your decisions. Because when you turn their test into your transformation, you don't just change how they see you. You change how you see yourself. And that's the kind of shift that nobody can take from you. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll talk about what really happens when you pass that test, and how your silence starts to echo in ways they never expected. Number 8, when you pass the test, they'll feel it. Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Marcus Aurelius. Let's talk about what happens when you do the one thing they never saw coming. You don't break. You don't chase. You don't explain yourself. You don't send that message. You don't flinch. You just stay still, focused, grounded. And that silence, that quiet power you chose, it starts to echo, not just around them, but inside them. See, they thought you'd fold, that you'd give in eventually, that maybe you'd wait a few days, a week, maybe two. But then the discomfort would get too loud, and you'd come crawling back to relieve it. They thought your silence had an expiration date. They never expected it to become your lifestyle. That's when it starts to hit them differently. Because the first few days, they can ignore it. They can distract themselves. They can scroll through social media, post selfies, pretend it's nothing. But the longer you stay silent, the more they start to feel it. And not in a surface level, I wonder what he's doing kind of way. Number, I'm talking about deep, twisting discomfort. The kind of silence that exposes their own intentions, their own games, their own pride. They wanted to see if you'd break first. But what they didn't realize is that you were breaking through. And now? Now it's them who can't sit still. It's them who start checking your profile. Them who's wondering, why hasn't he reached out? Is he really over this? Did I lose him? The game they started begins to backfire. Because your silence isn't passive anymore, it's haunting. It's not just the absence of your words, it's the absence of your energy, your attention, your validation, your warmth. All of that, the stuff they used to count on like clockwork, it's gone. And now they're left sitting in the empty space they created, facing the version of you that didn't beg, didn't chase, didn't fold. That version of you, that's power. Because what they feel now isn't just regret, it's uncertainty. And uncertainty is the enemy of ego. It forces them to replay everything, every last moment, every decision, every word. And suddenly, they're the one carrying the weight of unanswered questions. And you've made peace with not needing answers. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Control what you can. Let go of what you can't. Master yourself, not others. And when you apply that to silence, when you stop reacting and start rising, you stop playing small. You stop shrinking into people's tests, and you start expanding into your own potential. Now, here's the irony. You didn't stay silent to hurt them. You stayed silent to heal you. But that healing becomes a reflection they can't look away from. Because now you're not just a memory, you're a lesson. A reminder of what happens when someone tries to play games with a man who's done playing. Let's make one thing clear. You don't owe anyone your reaction. You don't owe them proof that you still care, just because they're too prideful to say they do. You don't owe them your presence when they took it for granted. You owe yourself your peace. You owe yourself progress. You owe yourself a life that doesn't orbit around someone else's confusion. So if they're sitting there hoping you'll break the silence, let them sit. Let them wrestle with the emptiness they tried to use against you. Let them feel the weight of your stillness. Because the longer you stay quiet, the louder the message becomes. I am not the same man you left in silence. That's when the test ends. Not with you chasing, not with you proving, but with you evolving. So, in conclusion, what began as a silent standoff wasn't just about them, it became about you. Their silence might have been a test, a power move, a trap even, but your response turned it into transformation. You didn't react. You rose. You didn't chase validation. You chose growth. And now, the silence they used to control you, it's echoing back to them. That's Stoic power, my friends. Calm, steady, unshakable. You've learned that your peace isn't a weakness, it's your weapon. So let them wonder, let them sit in the silence they created. You keep building in it. If this video hit something inside you, if it gave you clarity, strength, or just reminded you who you are, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more Stoic truth bombs like this. And drop in the comments. My silence is my strength. I'll see you in the next one. Stay grounded, stay powerful.